The Valley, Danny and Nia. When It's My Birthday overshadows It's Our Anniversary. How Bowen Family Systems Theory, attachment, love languages, the Gottman Method, and alcohol help us understand the marriage beneath the celebration. What happens when a couple chooses to get married on one partner's birthday? At first, it may feel deeply romantic. One date now holds two celebrations. One person's birthday becomes the birthday of the marriage itself. But what happens 10 years later when the couple travels to Mexico to commemorate both occasions and one partner repeatedly emphasizes, "It's my birthday," rather than, "It's our anniversary"? What happens when that partner identifies physical touch as his primary love language, anticipates birthday sex, and appears to experience sexual intimacy as evidence that he is loved, desired, and prioritized? And what happens when his wife is raising 4 young children, breastfeeding, physically depleted, and repeatedly expressing that what her body needs most is sleep? Then add alcohol. If drinking affects your friendships, changes the way you speak to your spouse, compromises your capacity to accept influence, and requires the people around you to regulate the emotional consequences, the question may no longer be whether you technically meet the criteria for alcohol use disorder. The more important question may be, is drinking compatible with the husband, father, friend, and man you want to be? Because sometimes the most clinically meaningful information is not how much someone drinks. It is what repeatedly happens when they do. Welcome back to the Path to Peace Therapy podcast and another edition of Reality Case Studies, where we examine the relationships we watch unfold on reality television through a therapeutic lens, not because I have evaluated or treated the people we are discussing, but because publicly presented relationships can help us recognize emotional processes that also occur within our own families. If we have not met yet, I'm Stephanie Buckley, an associate marriage and family therapist, ADHD and OCD specialist, family systems coach, integrative mental health practitioner, and sports psychology practitioner. I'm also a neurotypical wife, a mother to a now thriving 23-year-old neurodivergent son, and I have been married for more than 3 decades. My clinical work is grounded primarily in Bowen Family Systems Theory and solution-focused therapy. Bowen Family Systems. Theory teaches us to look beyond one person's behavior and examine the emotional system surrounding that behavior, the roles people assume, the anxiety traveling through the family, the patterns that intensify under stress, and the ways one person's functioning affects everyone else's. Today, we are examining Danny Booko and Nia Sanchez from the Valley. As always, this episode is not a psychological evaluation or diagnosis of Danny, Nia, or anyone else appearing on the program. I have never met with them clinically. I do not have access to their complete histories, private conversations, or internal experiences, and reality television is edited for storytelling. What we can responsibly examine are the behaviors and statements presented publicly and use them to better understand Bowen Family Systems Theory, attachment, love languages, sexual expectations, Gottman's relationship principles, alcohol-related disinhibition, emotional regulation, and the difference between an individual celebration and a shared marital ritual. The psychology I break down does not excuse harmful behavior, and it does not ask us to select a villain. It asks us to become more precise observers of patterns. From homelessness to hierarchy, when safety becomes associated with compliance. In her conversation with Lala, Nia revealed another important part of her family history. There had been infidelity on her father's part. She described how she, her mother, and her younger brother subsequently experienced homelessness, stayed in shelters, and lived in other people's homes before Nia and her brother ultimately went to live with their father. That disclosure substantially deepens the attachment story. We should be careful not to claim that we know every financial, legal, or custodial circumstance surrounding the family. We cannot definitively say what her father could have done, what he offered, what Nia's mother accepted, or what barriers existed between the parents. Those details have not been fully established publicly, but from the child's psychological perspective, the unanswered question may still have been enormous. If my father had a home and greater stability, why were my mother, my brother, and I living in shelters and other people's houses? A child does not understand divorce law, financial agreements, parental conflict, custody negotiations, pride, resentment, or the complicated decisions adults make after a marriage ends. A child experiences the situation concretely. One parent appears to have shelter, while the other parent and the children do not. Even if the full adult explanation is more complicated, the child's nervous system may encode a much simpler and more painful message. Protection was available, but it did not reach us. That distinction matters in attachment theory. Infidelity is frequently discussed as a rupture between two adults, but Bowen Family Systems Theory asks us to examine how that rupture reorganizes the entire family. When a parent is unfaithful, the consequences may extend far beyond the marital relationship. Trust changes, alliances shift, financial arrangements may change, housing may change, children may move between households. One parent may become emotionally overwhelmed, while the other becomes physically or emotionally distant. The children may never be given an explanation that matches the magnitude of the disruption they experience. For Nia, the infidelity was not simply something that occurred within her parents' marriage. According to the sequence she described, the breakdown of that relationship was followed by profound instability for her, her mother, and her brother. The family's housing became uncertain. They stayed in shelters and relied upon other people for places to live. Later, the children entered their father's custody. A child may therefore unconsciously connect relational betrayal with material instability. When trust breaks, home disappears. That association can remain emotionally powerful long after the person is no longer homeless. In adulthood, preserving a marriage may carry meaning beyond preserving romantic love. Marriage may also represent home, safety, family continuity, financial stability, and protection from the chaos that followed the dissolution of the child's original family. This does not mean Nia consciously believes that every marital conflict will lead to homelessness. Attachment learning is often implicit, meaning the body reacts to old emotional themes, even when the adult mind understands that the present circumstances are different. A disagreement may be only a disagreement, but the nervous system may experience it as the beginning of destabilization. A husband's intoxication may be only one evening of poor behavior, but the nervous system may register unpredictability. Public conflict may be part of filming a reality program, but the body may experience it as a threat to the structure she worked so hard to build. That may help us understand why Nia appears so invested in preserving stability and presenting the marriage as fundamentally intact. Again, this is one possible attachment formulation, not a conclusion about her private motivations. Infidelity can place children inside an extraordinarily complicated loyalty bind. A loyalty bind occurs when maintaining a relationship with one parent feels as though it may betray the other. If Nia understood that her father's infidelity contributed to the breakup of her parents' marriage, she may have felt protective of her mother. She may also have needed her father because he eventually became the parent capable of providing greater housing stability. These emotional realities can coexist. My father hurt my mother. My father's home became the place where my brother and I obtained stability. I love my mother. I need my father. I am angry about what happened. I am relieved to have somewhere stable to live. A child should never have to resolve such contradictory realities. Yet children frequently attempt to do exactly that. Because they depend upon their caregivers, they often suppress whichever emotions appear most threatening to the relationship they currently need. If anger toward the more stable parent feels dangerous, the child may become especially respectful, compliant, grateful, or emotionally controlled. That does not mean the child is consciously manipulating the environment. It means the attachment system is protecting access to the caregiver. Attachment is not simply affection. It is the biological drive to remain close to the person upon whom survival depends. For Nia, moving into her father's home may have delivered genuine relief and safety, while simultaneously creating grief, divided loyalty, and unanswered questions about why that security had not been available earlier. Her father may have become both the person associated with the original family rupture and the person associated with the restoration of structure. Psychologically, that is a complicated attachment position. The same parent can be experienced as both a source of injury and a source of protection. Nia was born and raised in California, not in a southern region where children may routinely be taught to respond with yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, as part of the broader culture. Certainly, some California families use those expressions, particularly military families and households with strong cultural, religious, or disciplinary traditions. But for many children raised in California, that degree of formality is not the social norm. This means the requirement to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am deserves to be understood as part of her particular family system, not merely dismissed as a regional custom. Those phrases communicated more than politeness. They established hierarchy. The adult gave the direction. The child acknowledged the authority. The expected response was not, why? Can we talk about it? Or, I disagree. It was, yes, sir. That structure may have offered something Nia's nervous system desperately needed: predictability. After shelters, temporary homes, food insecurity, marital rupture, and custodial uncertainty, her father's home appears to have offered explicit expectations. She knew how she was expected to answer. She knew who held authority. She knew which behaviors received approval and which behaviors produced correction. Predictability can be profoundly regulating for a child who has experienced chaos. But predictability and emotional security are not identical. A home can be highly organized while still leaving little space for a child's anger, grief, confusion, or competing loyalties. Behavioral compliance may reduce external conflict without resolving the child's internal distress. This is where we must distinguish regulation from suppression. Regulation means recognizing an emotion, tolerating it, and choosing how to express it safely. Suppression means pushing the emotion out of awareness or concealing it because expression feels unacceptable, dangerous, or disloyal. A child who says, yes, sir, while feeling angry may be demonstrating admirable self-control. She may also be learning that maintaining attachment requires concealing disagreement. Over time, compliance can become an attachment strategy. If I follow the rules, remain respectful, and do not create additional problems, I will be safe and I will continue to belong. Nia has described her father as a Vietnam veteran who later worked as a correctional sergeant. We should not assume that every veteran or corrections professional parents in the same way. Military service and correctional work do not automatically produce authoritarian parenting, emotional rigidity, or trauma. Many veterans and correctional officers are warm, responsive, and emotionally available parents. However, those professional environments do help us understand why structure, command, vigilance, compliance, and respect for authority may have carried particular importance within her father's worldview. Military environments are built upon clear rank, rapid compliance, behavioral discipline, and the capacity to function under pressure. In dangerous circumstances, an instruction cannot always become a negotiation. Following the chain of command can be connected to survival. Correctional environments also require continuous situational awareness. A correctional sergeant must monitor behavior, maintain boundaries, enforce institutional rules, recognize possible threats, manage escalation, and preserve order within an environment where unpredictability can become dangerous. Again, we cannot conclude that her father brought his entire professional role home. What we can say is that he spent significant portions of his life in systems where authority, vigilance, rule enforcement, emotional control, and immediate compliance were functionally important. The family message may have become, rules create order, order creates safety, authority must be respected, strong emotions must be controlled. For Nia, those lessons may have been reinforced by the contrast between two dramatically different chapters of childhood. Life with her mother after the marital rupture appears to have included shelters, temporary housing, and uncertainty. Life in her father's custody appears to have introduced greater external structure, hierarchy, and behavioral expectations. The child's brain may therefore have developed an especially powerful association. Chaos occurs when structure collapses. Safety returns when rules are followed. This does not mean her mother caused the chaos or that her father alone created safety. Homelessness is shaped by economic, relational, legal, and structural circumstances far beyond one parent's character. But children do not formulate sophisticated sociological explanations. They form emotional associations from what they repeatedly experience. One environment felt unpredictable, another felt controlled. One required wondering where the family would stay. The other told her exactly how she was expected to answer. Compliance is often treated as either entirely positive or entirely negative. Clinically, it is neither. Its meaning depends upon its function. Healthy cooperation allows a child to learn respect, responsibility, frustration tolerance, and participation within a family. Attachment-based compliance, however, may carry a more anxious message. I need to behave correctly so that I do not lose safety, approval, or belonging. When children experience family rupture, homelessness, or movement between caregivers, they may become highly sensitive to the possibility of further disruption. Some externalize their distress through anger, defiance, or risk-taking. Others become exceptionally competent, agreeable, disciplined, and emotionally contained. The second child is often praised because she appears resilient. She follows the rules, performs well, and causes few problems. Adults may not recognize how much anxiety is being managed underneath that competence. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a false self-adaptation. The child develops a highly functional presentation designed to maintain connection and meet environmental expectations, while more vulnerable emotions remain hidden. That does not mean the visible personality is fake. Nia's warmth, positivity, discipline, and graciousness may be entirely genuine. The question is whether those strengths also became responsible for concealing anger, grief, resentment, or fear. If she learned that compliance led to approval in her father's household, that discipline led to advancement in taekwondo, and that composure led to success in pageantry, then the reinforcement pattern became extraordinarily consistent. Follow the rules, control your response, remain respectful, work harder, preserve the relationship. Eventually, you will receive safety, achievement, and recognition. That pattern helped Nia accomplish remarkable things. It may also help us understand why she appears to work so hard to regulate herself and preserve her marriage when Danny becomes unpredictable. Even without knowing every adult circumstance, a child may carry questions such as, why did we have to become homeless before someone intervened? Why couldn't my father help my mother, even if their marriage had ended? Was the conflict between my parents more important than what my brother and I needed? Did I have to leave my mother to obtain stability? If I become angry with my father, could I lose the security he now provides? These questions do not require conscious answers to shape attachment. They may produce what psychologists call ambivalent attachment representations. The caregiver is associated with both relief and pain, security and betrayal, closeness and unanswered disappointment. The child may resolve this tension through idealization, compliance, emotional minimization, or intense achievement. If the parent must remain psychologically good because the child depends upon him, anger may be redirected inward or converted into a determination to become exceptionally well-behaved. This may be part of why Nia's positivity deserves such careful attention. Positivity can be authentic resilience. It can also help a child organize an emotionally contradictory story. We survived. I am grateful. I became stronger. I will focus on the good. All of that may be true. It may also coexist with grief about what should never have happened. Nia's black belt, discipline, delayed gratification, and the psychology of following the rules. Before we move from Nia's childhood into her pageant career, I want to spend more time examining what it psychologically means to earn a 5th-degree black belt. Because when we hear black belt, we may picture physical strength, impressive kicks, or the ability to defend oneself. What we may overlook is that martial arts is also an intensive education in executive functioning, emotional regulation, frustration tolerance, hierarchy, delayed gratification, and the belief that following clearly established rules eventually produces a meaningful reward. A 5th-degree black belt is not earned because someone performs well on one particular day. It represents years, often decades, of returning to the same structured environment, submitting to instruction, practicing repetitive movements, tolerating correction, and continuing toward a goal whose final reward remains far in the future. The student is repeatedly required to do something that is psychologically difficult, trade immediate comfort for long-term mastery. Psychologists call this delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is the capacity to resist an immediate reward, impulse, or escape in order to pursue a more valuable future outcome. In ordinary life, delayed gratification might mean studying instead of going out with friends, saving money rather than spending it immediately, or continuing physical therapy when progress feels painfully slow. In martial arts, it means practicing the same stance, block, kick, or form hundreds of times even when the student is tired, bored, frustrated, or eager to advance. The belt system makes delayed gratification visible. Each belt communicates that progress is possible, but advancement must be earned sequentially. A student cannot simply decide that she feels ready for the next level. She must demonstrate technical proficiency, emotional discipline, respect for the instructor, consistency in practice, and the ability to perform under pressure. The larger reward remains available, but only after a clearly defined set of expectations has been satisfied. This is where behavioral psychology becomes especially relevant. Martial arts uses both positive reinforcement and conditioned reinforcement. Positive reinforcement occurs when a desired behavior is followed by something rewarding, increasing the likelihood that the behavior will occur again. A student follows instructions, practices consistently, demonstrates self-control, and eventually earns praise, recognition, advancement, or a new belt. The belt becomes a conditioned reinforcer because it acquires psychological meaning far beyond the physical strip of fabric. It represents competence, belonging, approval, progress, identity, and proof that disciplined behavior produces results. Each advancement teaches the nervous system a reliable equation. Follow the structure, respect the authority, control your impulses, complete the work, receive the reward. Over time, the student does not simply learn martial arts techniques. She develops a psychological relationship with rules. Rules become associated with predictability. Predictability becomes associated with safety. Compliance becomes associated with advancement. Emotional containment becomes associated with competence. The student learns that there is a correct sequence, a correct posture, a correct response, and a correct way to proceed. For a child whose earlier life included housing instability and food insecurity, that kind of structure may carry particular emotional power. When the external world has once felt unpredictable, An environment with clearly defined expectations can be profoundly regulating. The martial arts studio tells the child what will happen next. There is an instructor, there is a hierarchy, there is a uniform, there is a sequence of movements, there are standards for behavior, there is a visible pathway toward achievement. The nervous system does not have to guess. This does not mean Nia consciously pursued martial arts because of her childhood adversity, and we should not impose that explanation upon her. What we can observe is that martial arts provided psychological conditions that contrasted sharply with unpredictability, order instead of uncertainty, repetition instead of disruption, and a reliable relationship between effort and outcome. In an unstable childhood environment, a child can do everything right and still experience homelessness, hunger, separation, or disappointment. The outcome does not always correspond with the child's behavior. In martial arts, however, effort is far more likely to produce a recognizable result. Practice improves technique. Discipline increases readiness. Following directions supports advancement. The child receives an experience that may have been missing elsewhere. My behavior can influence what happens next. Psychologists call this a sense of agency, the belief that one's actions can produce meaningful effects. Agency is critical to resilience because helplessness develops when people repeatedly experience outcomes they cannot influence. Martial arts can provide the opposite experience. It teaches. You cannot control everything, but you can control your preparation, your response, your effort, and whether you return tomorrow. That lesson appears beautifully aligned with what Nia has said about positivity helping her survive. Positivity allowed her to preserve hope when she could not control her circumstances. Martial arts may have provided a structured place in which hope could be converted into action. Optimism said, things can improve. Discipline said, here is what I can do today to move toward that improvement. Earning a 5th-degree black belt also requires considerable frustration tolerance. Frustration tolerance is the capacity to remain engaged when progress is slow, mistakes occur, or a reward is delayed. A person with strong frustration tolerance can experience disappointment without immediately abandoning the goal, blaming someone else, demanding an exception, or escalating emotionally. Imagine practicing a complex form for months and being told that it still needs refinement. Imagine believing you are ready for advancement and hearing that you must continue training. Imagine watching another student progress more quickly. The martial artist must learn to metabolize disappointment to feel it, regulate it, and return to the work. That is fundamentally different from requiring the environment to remove the frustration. Martial arts teaches that discomfort is not necessarily evidence that something has gone wrong. Sometimes discomfort is part of mastery. Sometimes correction is not rejection. Sometimes waiting is not deprivation. Sometimes being told not yet does not mean never. Those lessons can produce extraordinary resilience. They can help someone endure difficult pregnancies, recover from professional disappointments, raise young children, build a career, and continue functioning under public scrutiny. They may help explain why Nia often appears capable of remaining composed when other people around her become emotionally activated. But every adaptation has a potential cost when it is carried from one environment into another without modification. The martial arts studio is organized around a legitimate hierarchy. The instructor has earned authority through experience and training. The student is expected to listen, comply, and tolerate correction. Marriage, however, is not supposed to be organized around an instructor and a student. It is an adult partnership requiring mutual influence. A person who has spent years being rewarded for following rules, respecting hierarchy, maintaining composure, and waiting patiently for the eventual reward may become exceptionally capable of tolerating discomfort. That capacity is admirable until it encourages her to tolerate more relational discomfort than she should. The nervous system may continue applying the old equation: remain composed. Follow the expectations. Do not become reactive. Keep working. Eventually, the reward will come. Within marriage, that anticipated reward might be greater stability, improved communication, a partner who drinks less, more reciprocal parenting, increased emotional safety, or the return of the affectionate relationship that existed before 4 children and reality television intensified the pressure. This is where delayed gratification can become overextended. Delayed gratification is adaptive when the desired reward is realistically connected to one's own sustained effort. Nia could practice a martial arts form and improve her performance. She could prepare for a pageant interview and strengthen her response. But she cannot create another adult's emotional regulation through her own discipline. She can lower her voice, she can offer reassurance, she can make a repair attempt, she can choose her words carefully, she can attempt to preserve the social environment, but she cannot do Danny's self-regulation for him. That distinction is essential. Discipline gives us influence over our own behavior. It does not give us control over someone else's choices. This is why Nia's extraordinary frustration tolerance may be both a strength and a vulnerability within the relationship. She may possess the psychological endurance to remain calm, wait, forgive, try again, and continue hoping for change. But endurance is not the same as reciprocity. Being capable of tolerating a pattern does not make the pattern healthy. There is another potential consequence of growing up in systems where following the rules reliably produced rewards. A person may become deeply invested in being the good one, the disciplined student, the respectful daughter, the gracious beauty queen, the supportive wife, or the emotionally regulated mother. This identity can be enormously reinforcing because it brings approval, belonging, achievement, and safety. The challenge emerges when anger, disappointment, resentment, or boundary setting appear incompatible with that identity. If being agreeable has historically been rewarded, direct confrontation may feel dangerous or somehow wrong. The person may soften a legitimate boundary so thoroughly that the other person does not experience it as a boundary at all. If Nia learned repeatedly that composure leads to approval and that emotional discipline produces success, it makes sense that she would reach for those same skills during marital conflict. She lowers her voice because lowering her voice has worked. She remains positive because positivity has helped her survive. She waits because years of training have taught her that disciplined patience eventually produces a reward. But marriage introduces a variable. Martial arts does not, another adult with free will. There is no guaranteed belt at the end of marital endurance. There is no instructor ensuring that the person who follows all the rules will receive the promised advancement. The relationship improves only when both partners participate in change. That is where Bowen's concept of differentiation becomes especially important for Nia. Differentiation would not require her to abandon her composure, optimism, discipline, or respect. Those are authentic strengths. It would mean using those strengths while becoming increasingly clear about where her responsibility ends and Danny's begins. A differentiated response might sound like, "I love you, and I will not manage your drinking for you. I understand that physical touch helps you feel connected, and I will not override my body to prevent your disappointment. I can speak calmly, but I will not remain in a conversation in which I am being spoken to disrespectfully. I can support change, but I cannot create it on your behalf." That is not rebellion against the rules. It is the development of an adult internal authority. Nia's 5th degree black belt tells us that she knows how to work toward a goal. She knows how to withstand discomfort, delay immediate reward, submit to a disciplined process, and continue after disappointment. The deeper developmental task inside marriage may be recognizing that not every relational problem can be solved by becoming even more disciplined herself. Sometimes the next level is not earned by trying harder. Sometimes it is earned by becoming clearer. Nia's pageant career. When composure, preparation, and presentation become part of identity. After years of martial arts training, Nia entered another highly structured achievement system, competitive pageantry. She eventually won Miss Nevada USA and then Miss USA in 2014. She went on to represent the United States at Miss Universe, where she finished as first runner-up. Those titles are important, but they tell us only the most visible part of the story. We see the crown, the sash, and the final moment of recognition. We do not see the years of preparation, previous competitions, disappointments, corrections, rehearsals, and repeated evaluations required to reach that stage. Nia did not simply enter her first pageant and immediately become Miss USA. Her success emerged through a longer process of competing, refining her skills, receiving feedback, returning after disappointment, and continuing to pursue a distant goal. Much like earning an advanced black belt, pageantry required delayed gratification, tolerating the discomfort of not winning yet, while continuing to prepare for the possibility of a future reward. Competitive pageantry is often reduced to physical beauty, but that interpretation overlooks the psychological skills required to succeed. Contestants must prepare for interviews, develop public speaking skills, communicate under time pressure, maintain posture and facial control, remember choreography, manage wardrobe and appearance, respond diplomatically to difficult questions, and remain composed while being compared with other highly accomplished women. The contestant is not evaluated only upon how she looks. She is evaluated upon how she enters a room, responds to authority, manages pressure, recovers from mistakes, relates to other contestants, communicates her values, and presents herself when she knows every movement is being observed. For Nia, pageantry reinforced many of the same capacities she had already developed through her father's household and martial arts training: discipline, respect for structure, responsiveness to coaching, frustration tolerance, emotional control, and the ability to delay immediate gratification in pursuit of a larger goal. Once again, the psychological equation was clear: prepare thoroughly, follow the expectations, accept correction, control your response, present yourself well. Eventually, you may receive the reward. The crown as a conditioned reward. For someone whose childhood included homelessness, family rupture, temporary housing, and movement between parents, being selected may have carried meaning far beyond winning a competition. Again, we cannot know what the title meant privately to Nia without asking her. But from an attachment perspective, public selection can become emotionally powerful for someone whose early life contained uncertainty about where she belonged. The title may symbolically communicate, you have a place. You are wanted. You are worthy of recognition. The room has chosen you. That does not diminish Nia's talent or reduce her achievement to her childhood. It helps us understand why achievement can become deeply connected to safety, identity, and belonging. Pageantry as emotional training. For a beauty queen, however, this regulation becomes part of the job. Nia learned how to smile while being evaluated, speak calmly while under pressure, and remain warm while knowing she was being compared with other women. She learned that an unguarded facial expression could be photographed, replayed, or interpreted by observers who knew nothing about what she was feeling internally. These skills may help explain why she frequently appears extraordinarily composed on the Valley. When conflict erupts, Nia often softens her facial expression, lowers her voice, and selects her words carefully. Some viewers may interpret that as artificial or excessively controlled. Others may see emotional intelligence. Both interpretations may overlook the years of training that made such regulation almost automatic. Her presentation does not tell us that she is unaffected. It tells us that she knows how to remain presentable while affected. When positivity becomes part of the performance, Nia has shared that therapy helped her recognize positivity as part of how she survived. Pageantry may have further reinforced that positivity by rewarding warmth, optimism, graciousness, accessibility, and the ability to communicate hope. That combination is powerful. Nia may be genuinely optimistic while also having learned that optimism is socially and professionally rewarded. The outside world responds positively when she smiles, reassures, encourages, and remains gracious. This does not mean her positivity is fake. A quality can be completely authentic and still be reinforced by the environment. The clinical question is whether Nia has equal permission to express emotions that do not fit the pageant presentation. Anger, resentment, betrayal, disgust, exhaustion, disappointment, or the desire to stop managing everyone else. If positivity once protected her from despair and later helped her succeed professionally, acknowledging negative emotions may feel like more than having a difficult day. It may feel as though she is violating the identity that has brought her safety, admiration, and opportunity. Yet emotional health does not require constant positivity. Healthy regulation includes the capacity to acknowledge anger without becoming destructive, express disappointment without feeling ungrateful, and establish boundaries without believing that directness makes someone unkind. The pageant answer and the marital answer, from judges to viewers. Pageantry and reality television both involve public evaluation, but their rules are dramatically different. In pageantry, Nia knew who the judges were. She understood the competition's structure. She knew which portions she could prepare for and what qualities the environment was designed to reward. Reality television offers no such clarity. The cast members are not official judges, yet they evaluate one another continuously. Producers shape storylines. Viewers interpret edited scenes. Podcasters like myself, social media accounts, and strangers assess Nia's marriage, parenting, loyalty, authenticity, and emotional reactions. The criteria change constantly. If Nia remains calm, some people admire her composure, while others accuse her of protecting an image. If she supports Danny, she may be called loyal or enabling. If she confronts him, she risks escalating the situation. If she expresses anger, viewers may decide they are finally seeing the real Nia. If she maintains warmth, they may conclude she is still performing. In pageantry, composure helped her advance. In reality television, composure can become evidence used both for and against her. She is no longer standing before a clearly identified panel of judges. She is being judged by everyone. When the crown becomes a family role, that role may be partly authentic and partly assigned by the system. The more dysregulated Danny becomes, the more regulated Nia appears expected to become. The more chaotic reality television becomes, the more pressure she may feel to represent stability. Her pageant skills become family system labor. She is no longer using composure only to manage her own performance. She appears to be using it to contain her husband, reassure her castmates, protect her children and marriage, and manage how the family will be perceived publicly. No crown prepares a person to carry that much emotional responsibility. The strength and the cost. Nia's pageant career developed extraordinary strengths. She learned how to prepare, persevere, communicate, accept coaching, tolerate judgment, recover after disappointment, and remain grounded while millions of people watched her. Those capacities may now help her survive the intense exposure of reality television. But every strength becomes vulnerable when a person is required to use it continuously. Composure can become self-silencing. Diplomacy can prevent direct confrontation. Positivity can bypass legitimate anger. Loyalty can become protection from consequences. A polished public image can make it more difficult to disclose private pain. Nia's next developmental achievement may not require another crown, another perfectly measured response, or greater tolerance for chaos. It may require permission to be less polished and more direct. She does not have to stop being gracious to become differentiated. She does not have to become emotionally explosive to establish a boundary. She does not have to abandon the beauty queen to protect the woman underneath her. The most important question is whether Nia can use the discipline pageantry gave her without remaining trapped inside its performance demands. Because she should not have to win her marriage by being the most composed woman in the room. Now, return to the valley. From a Bowen perspective, this is not simply a trait inside Nia. It is a reciprocal process inside the relationship. Danny's emotional escalation increases Nia's regulating behavior. Nia's increased regulation may protect Danny from experiencing the full interpersonal consequences of his behavior. The more she stabilizes, the less he may be required to stabilize himself. Her history may have taught her that when a man's decisions disrupt the family, the woman and children absorb the instability. Her father's home may then have taught her that survival depends upon respecting authority, following expectations, and not challenging the structure that provides safety. The adult developmental task is not for Nia to reject everything her father taught her. Discipline, respect, gratitude, perseverance, and composure remain extraordinary strengths. The task is learning that adult attachment does not require obedience. She can love her husband without managing him. She can value her marriage without concealing its problems. She can remain composed while establishing an unambiguous boundary. She can understand Danny's history without protecting him from accountability. She can appreciate the stability her father eventually provided while still grieving that she, her mother, and her brother experienced homelessness before that stability arrived. Two truths can coexist. Her father may have loved his children and still left unanswered questions about why they were not protected sooner. Danny may love Nia and still behave in ways that destabilize her. Nia may be remarkably resilient and still deserve a life in which she is not continually required to use that resilience to absorb someone else's chaos. Before Danny and Nia became a couple, when food, housing, and physical safety are inconsistent, the developing brain can become highly attuned to unpredictability. This is sometimes described as hypervigilance, an increased sensitivity to possible changes or threats in the environment. Hypervigilance does not always look like visible panic. In some people, it appears as exceptional organization, constant preparation, emotional composure, or a strong desire to preserve harmony. Nia has shared that her therapist helped her understand that her positivity was not simply an appealing personality trait. Positivity had also become part of how she survived. That is an important psychological distinction. Optimism can be authentic while simultaneously functioning as an adaptive coping mechanism, a strategy developed to maintain psychological functioning during circumstances a child cannot control. Later, Nia and her younger brother reportedly moved into their father's home. Her father was a military veteran who became a correctional sergeant, and she has described a household in which responses such as, "Yes, sir," and "Yes, ma'am," were expected. This represented an entirely different emotional environment, one structured around hierarchy, discipline, clear expectations, behavioral control, and predictability. Then came Taekwondo. Nia eventually earned a 5th-degree black belt, an accomplishment requiring years of repetition, frustration tolerance, respect for instruction, bodily control, emotional discipline, and delayed gratification. Delayed gratification means tolerating discomfort in the present to obtain a meaningful reward in the future. The student practices the movement hundreds of times before earning the next belt. Progress is built through effort that may receive very little immediate applause. Then, Nia entered competitive pageantry. Before winning Miss USA in 2014, she had spent years developing the skills demanded by that environment: public speaking, posture, interview preparation, diplomacy, facial control, presentation, recovery from disappointment, and the capacity to remain composed while being evaluated. Nia represented Nevada when she won the Miss USA title and later represented the United States at Miss Universe, where she placed first runner-up. Pageantry is frequently reduced to physical beauty, but that overlooks its psychological demands. A contestant may spend months preparing for a few minutes in front of judges. She learns to smile while her performance is being evaluated, answer difficult questions without becoming defensive, and remain gracious when the outcome is not what she hoped it would be. Across Nia's life, we therefore see several environments that rewarded similar capacities: discipline, preparation, respect, composure, delayed gratification, and emotional control. That does not mean every calm response we see from Nia is a trauma response. It may reflect temperament, martial arts discipline, pageant training, therapy, emotional intelligence, or deliberate relationship skills. Responsible psychology requires us to hold multiple possible explanations rather than attaching one dramatic label to every behavior. Danny entered the marriage with a different developmental and professional history. He grew up in Michigan within a family connected to Christian ministry and began performing through church and local theater. He later moved to Southern California to pursue acting and built what the entertainment industry would recognize as the career of a working actor. He appeared in television programs including The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, The O.C., Hannah Montana, Desperate Housewives, iCarly, Shameless, and The Goldbergs. He also developed an extensive career in voice, ADR, and loop group performance. ADR and loop group performers contribute the additional voices, reactions, conversations, and background dialogue that make the world of a film or television program sound real. The audience may hear the performer without ever recognizing him. Danny has spent much of his professional life using his voice to create emotional impact, occupy different characters, and respond quickly to direction. From an invisible voice to a forward-facing reality television personality, Danny later built what the entertainment industry would call the career of a working actor. He appeared in television programs including The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, The O.C., Hannah Montana, Desperate Housewives, The Sweet Life on Deck, iCarly, Kickin' It, The Mentalist, Shameless, and The Goldbergs. He also appeared in films and gradually developed a substantial career in ADR and loop group performance. The term working actor is important. It does not necessarily mean becoming the recognizable star of one long-running series. It means repeatedly auditioning, booking individual roles, completing the work, and beginning the process again. One episode ends, and the next audition begins. One role provides professional validation, but it does not guarantee permanent visibility or financial security. That reinforcement schedule can create an unusual relationship with recognition. Every booking communicates, "You were selected." But many roles are temporary. The actor receives attention, completes the performance, and then returns to uncertainty. The reward arrives, but it does not remain. Over time, Danny's professional work expanded into ADR and loop group performance, an area of entertainment most viewers hear without ever knowing it exists. ADR generally refers to additional dialogue replacement or automated dialogue replacement. It may involve re-recording dialogue that was unclear during filming, matching vocal performances to existing footage, adding reactions, or creating dialogue needed after a scene has already been shot. Loop group performers create many of the voices occupying the background of films and television programs. Conversations in restaurants, spectators at sporting events, hospital employees moving through hallways, travelers inside airports, pedestrians on city streets, or crowds reacting to an unfolding emergency. Those background voices are essential because silence would make the fictional environment feel artificial. When we watch a scene inside a crowded restaurant, we expect to hear overlapping conversations, laughter, glasses moving, servers speaking, and people reacting to one another. Loop group performers create that social atmosphere. A single performer may be asked to create multiple characters within one recording session. Danny might need to shift his age, vocal quality, accent, volume, emotional tone, and social role within seconds. He may become an impatient restaurant customer, an excited sports fan, an anxious bystander, a police officer giving instructions, or an indistinct voice inside a crowd. That work requires creativity, vocal flexibility, emotional range, rapid responsiveness, and what psychologists and linguists call prosody, the rhythm, volume, pacing, pitch, and emotional inflection of speech. Because the performer may not have facial expressions available to communicate meaning, the voice must carry the emotional information. Danny has therefore spent years learning how to use his voice to produce a reaction. He has also worked in professional settings where accepting direction is essential. A director may ask for more intensity, less intensity, greater urgency, a different accent, a faster pace, or another emotional quality. Danny must respond without treating every correction as a personal rejection. Inside the studio, direction is specific, contained, and focused upon the performance. Give me another version. Make it louder. Pull it back. Add more urgency. That was great. Let's move on. The feedback loop is immediate. Danny performs, receives direction, adjusts the performance, and receives confirmation when the production team has what it needs. But there is a paradox within loop group work. The performer must be expressive enough to create a believable environment while remaining unobtrusive enough not to distract from the principal actors. His work is successful precisely when the audience does not consciously notice him. Millions of people may have heard Danny's voice without knowing that they heard Danny. This creates an intriguing professional tension. He has contributed to recognizable film and television productions, but much of his contribution remained anonymous to the public. He was present inside the entertainment industry without consistently being the person audiences came to see. He helped create other people's stories while remaining in the acoustic background. Then came the Valley, when the background voice becomes the story. Occupational skills, inside personal conflict. That appears to be one of the reciprocal patterns between Danny and Nia. As Danny becomes more expansive, Nia appears to become more contained. As his voice becomes louder, hers becomes softer. As he occupies more emotional space, she appears to shrink her presentation to reduce the overall intensity. This does not necessarily mean Danny consciously intends to silence her. It means that their regulatory strategies interact. His nervous system appears to move emotion outward. Hers appears to contain emotion and restore order. Accepting direction versus accepting influence. The Gottman Method identifies accepting influence as one of the central capacities required for a healthy partnership. It means allowing a partner's feelings, perspective, or request to affect one's next decision. Danny's career demonstrates that he is capable of responding to feedback within a professional structure. The marital developmental task is transferring that capacity into a relationship where the person offering influence is not a director, but an equal partner. Nia is not attempting to direct a performance. She is attempting to protect the emotional safety of the relationship and the social environment surrounding them. Reality television's contradictory reinforcement system. Danny may become more central to the episode precisely because he became intoxicated, emotionally escalated, or entered into conflict. The scene may damage a friendship or create tension in his marriage while simultaneously securing his position within the program's narrative. This creates what behavioral psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement occurs when a behavior is rewarded unpredictably rather than every time it occurs. It is an especially powerful reinforcement schedule because the person never knows which behavior will produce the next reward. One evening of drinking may lead to embarrassment and criticism. Another may produce humor, bonding, memorable television, and positive attention. Emotional intensity may sometimes alienate castmates and sometimes make Danny the center of the episode. The consequences are inconsistent. For a working actor who spent years hoping each individual opportunity might lead to something larger, reality television provides an extraordinary form of recognition. Danny is no longer an anonymous contributor to another performer's scene. Viewers know his name, they recognize his face, they discuss his marriage, they follow his family, they react to him directly. He is finally forward-facing. But recognition carries a psychological price. The audience is no longer hearing only the skilled voice he was hired to produce. They are watching the man behind that voice attempt to function as a husband, father, friend, and cast member under stress. When the voice that provides for the family also activates the room, Danny has been professionally reinforced for using his voice effectively. Directors have hired him because he can enter a recording studio, receive instructions, alter his delivery, and create the emotional atmosphere a production requires. His vocal expressiveness has been an asset. It has generated employment, income, professional credibility, and a way to support his wife and children. The very voice that may represent competence, provision, creativity, and professional achievement inside Danny's family can produce an entirely different response when it enters an unscripted interpersonal conflict. On The Valley, Danny is no longer using his voice to support a fictional scene. He is using it while speaking to his wife and castmates. There is no director determining the appropriate emotional intensity. There is no engineer balancing the sound. There is no script providing context. There is no cut when the delivery becomes too forceful. The instrument remains the same, but the relational environment has changed. Inside a recording studio, a powerful vocal reaction may mean that Danny completed the assignment successfully. Inside a social conflict, that same volume, projection, repetition, or intensity may cause the other people in the room to experience a visceral reaction. A visceral reaction is an immediate bodily response that occurs before a person has fully interpreted the situation intellectually. The autonomic nervous system detects tone, volume, facial expression, proximity, and emotional intensity within milliseconds. The body may respond with a faster heartbeat, muscle tension, heat in the face, a tightening stomach, shallow breathing, or an impulse to fight, flee, freeze, or appease. This means Danny's castmates may not simply disagree with what he is saying. Their nervous systems may be reacting to how the message is being delivered. The content might be, "I am frustrated." The body of the listener may receive, "Something dangerous or unpredictable is happening in this room." This distinction is essential because intention and impact are not always identical. Danny may intend to be animated, passionate, funny, or emphatic. His castmates may experience him as overwhelming, confrontational, intrusive, or emotionally unsafe. Both experiences can be real at the same time. A person does not have to intend intimidation for another person's nervous system to feel intimidated. Emotional safety is not determined solely by the speaker's intention. It is also influenced by the listener's physiological experience. The voice as both family resource and relational stressor. A surgeon's decisiveness may be invaluable in an operating room, but controlling at the dinner table. An attorney's capacity to challenge contradictions may be effective in court, but corrosive during a marital disagreement. A coach's commanding voice may organize a team, but frighten a child. A performer's vocal intensity may create believable entertainment, but overpower a spouse or friend. Context determines whether a capacity is functioning as a strength. When vocal intensity becomes emotional occupation, Nia begins attempting to calm him. The group stops discussing the original issue and begins reacting to Danny's reaction. At that point, his voice is no longer simply participating in the conversation. It is organizing the conversation. Bowen would describe this as an increase in emotional system anxiety. As anxiety rises, differentiation decreases. People become less capable of thoughtful, flexible responding and more likely to become reactive. They interrupt, defend, attack, withdraw, appease, or seek alliances. The original subject may become almost irrelevant. The room is now responding to the emotional intensity itself. This may be why Danny's voice appears to elicit such strong reactions from his castmates. They are not responding only to a proposition that can be debated logically. They may be experiencing autonomic activation, what feels like an immediate need to defend themselves, escape the interaction, stop the escalation, or match his intensity. That is the visceral reaction. What happens inside Nia's nervous system? Alcohol removes the sound engineer, the difference between being heard and overwhelming the listener, from professional performance to public identity. Reality television may therefore offer Danny something both gratifying and threatening. It provides visibility that much of his voice career did not. It allows him to become the recurring character rather than contribute briefly to someone else's production. It places him at the center of a continuing story. At the same time, it removes the protective boundary between the performer and the person. Danny cannot simply record another take after an argument with Nia. He cannot replace a poorly delivered interaction during post-production. He cannot control which emotional reaction becomes the defining moment of an episode. The studio once asked him to disappear convincingly into a fictional world. Reality television asks him to expose his actual world and then tolerate millions of people deciding what that exposure means. That is a profound identity transition. The most important psychological question is not whether Danny is performing for the cameras. Everyone changes to some degree when they know they are being observed. The more useful question is whether the traits that helped him succeed as a performer, vocal intensity, expressiveness, charisma, emotional immediacy, and comfort occupying attention are being balanced by the relational skills required of a husband. Can he lower the volume when expression becomes overpowering? Can he accept Nia's influence without experiencing it as an attack? Can he tolerate not being the emotional center of the room? Can he recognize when alcohol has transformed an engaging performance into relational harm? And can the man who spent years responding skillfully to professional direction learn to respond just as thoughtfully when his wife quietly says, "This is becoming too much"? Acting certainly requires persistence, flexibility, and the capacity to withstand rejection. At the same time, performance environments also offer immediate reinforcement. Immediate reinforcement occurs when a behavior is quickly followed by praise, approval, laughter, attention, or another rewarding response. An actor delivers a line and hears, "Great take." A performer makes the room laugh and immediately feels the reaction. A successful audition leads to a callback. A booking confirms that the performance was effective. Nia's accomplishments repeatedly asked her to wait, prepare, contain, and persist. Danny's professional world required persistence too, but it also rewarded expression, visibility, charisma, emotional intensity, and the capacity to generate a response. Neither developmental pathway is superior. Both produced considerable strengths. The psychological question is what happens when those strengths become overused within a marriage? Composure can become self-silencing. Positivity can become emotional bypassing, meaning painful emotions are moved past before they have been acknowledged. Accommodation can become overfunctioning. Expressiveness can become domination. Confidence can become entitlement. A desire for recognition can become difficulty tolerating moments when someone else's needs must take priority. Marriage is where these emotional histories meet. Why would a couple marry on his birthday? By marrying on Danny's birthday, the couple permanently linked an individual celebration belonging to Danny with a shared celebration belonging to both Danny and Nia. The date now holds two legitimate meanings. This is the day you were born, and this is the day we became a married couple. From a Bowen Family Systems perspective, healthy marriage requires differentiation of self. Differentiation means maintaining an emotionally grounded I while participating responsibly in the marital we. A differentiated partner can say, "This is my birthday, and it is also our anniversary. I want to feel celebrated, and I also want to celebrate what we have created together." The difficulty begins when the individual meaning repeatedly eclipses the relational meaning. During the trip to Mexico, Danny reportedly emphasized, "It's my birthday," despite the trip also marking their 10th wedding anniversary. Language gives us clues about what feels psychologically central. "It's our anniversary" directs attention toward reciprocity, shared history, and the couple. "It's my birthday" directs attention toward the self and may implicitly communicate, "My needs should take priority today." That does not mean Danny deliberately intended to erase Nia or the marriage. Birthday language can also function as an attachment protest. An attachment protest is a heightened attempt to restore connection or reassurance when someone feels insufficiently valued. It may appear as demanding attention, becoming angry, withdrawing, criticizing, or repeatedly reminding others of what they should be doing. Beneath the protest may be a more vulnerable question. Am I important to you? Do you desire me? Will you prioritize me without my having to ask? The emotional need may be understandable, while the method of expressing it remains ineffective or hurtful. Physical touch, birthday sex, and the difference between desire and entitlement. This helps us understand the potential emotional meaning of birthday sex, but it does not create an obligation. A love language identifies how someone may most readily experience affection. It does not establish what another person must provide, when they must provide it, or what condition their body must be in while providing it. Physical touch helps me feel loved is a vulnerable disclosure. "If you love me, you should have sex with me tonight," converts vulnerability into pressure. That distinction matters enormously. Sexual consent must remain freely given, specific, and reversible within marriage. Marriage does not create permanent access to a partner's body. A birthday does not transform desire into entitlement, and an anniversary does not require sexual performance. Now consider Nia's physical context. She is raising 4 very young children. She has navigated pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, interrupted sleep, and the relentless sensory and physical demands of caring for small children. Throughout the season, she repeatedly communicates that she wants to sleep. The body cannot always move effortlessly from maternal caregiving into erotic availability. Many mothers of young children experience being touched out, meaning their nervous system has received so much physical contact through nursing, holding, soothing, carrying, and caring for children that additional touch feels overstimulating rather than connecting. Responsive desire is also relevant. Spontaneous desire appears before sexual activity. A person feels desire and then seeks intimacy. Responsive desire may emerge after a person feels rested, emotionally connected, safe, and physically engaged. A depleted partner may not begin the evening feeling sexual, but could potentially develop desire when the context supports it. However, pressure, resentment, intoxication, conflict, and fear of disappointing a partner generally interfere with that process. Danny may experience sex as regulating and connecting. Nia may require regulation and connection before her body can become sexually receptive. Those are not the same sequence. The relational problem is not that one partner wants sex while the other wants sleep. Desire discrepancy is common. The problem develops when one need is framed as proof of love while the other is treated as an obstacle to it. If Danny says, "Physical touch helps me feel reassured and connected," that creates an opportunity for intimacy. If the message becomes, "It is my birthday, so I should receive sex," Nia is placed in the position of either overriding her body or becoming responsible for his disappointment. That is not intimacy. That is emotional pressure wearing a birthday hat. What the Gottman Method helps us see when alcohol enters the system. The question beneath "It's my birthday." Can Danny express his desire without converting disappointment into entitlement? Can Nia express exhaustion without becoming responsible for managing his emotional response? Can he accept her influence when she asks him to regulate? Can she stop over-functioning long enough for him to become responsible for his own emotional state? Can alcohol be evaluated honestly according to its consequences? And can they hold both truths at once? It is my birthday, and it is our anniversary. Because marriage cannot survive indefinitely when one partner's me repeatedly consumes the couple's we. When we look at Danny and Nia through Bowen Family Systems Theory, attachment theory, the Gottman Method, and the psychology of reinforcement, we are not looking for one person to blame. We are watching two developmental histories collide inside a marriage, a young family, and the extraordinarily chaotic environment of reality television. Compliance became connected to predictability. Predictability became connected to safety. Taekwondo reinforced that equation. Nia learned that if she respected the hierarchy, regulated her body, tolerated correction, repeated the work, and delayed gratification, she would eventually advance. Her 5th-degree black belt represents far more than physical ability. It represents years of learning that discipline produces results and that discomfort can be tolerated in service of a meaningful future reward. Pageantry reinforced the pattern again. Preparation, graciousness, emotional containment, diplomacy, and presentation eventually led Nia to become Miss USA. She learned how to remain composed while being scrutinized, how to recover after disappointment, and how to present warmth even when the internal emotional experience may have been far more complicated. Then add Danny's drinking, and Nia is no longer regulating only herself. She appears to be monitoring her husband, anticipating the cast's reactions, attempting to protect the marriage, and calculating how the interaction may eventually be presented to millions of viewers. That is an impossible emotional assignment. Nia may be highly capable of creating order from chaos, but her capacity does not make that chaos her responsibility. Danny brings his own developmental and professional history into the relationship. He grew up performing and eventually built a career through acting, ADR, and loop group work. His voice became an instrument of professional competence. It helped him obtain employment, support his family, and contribute to major film and television productions, even when the audience did not recognize the person behind the sound. Now, on the Valley, that voice is forward-facing. The voice that once supported other people's scenes has become part of the scene itself. The same vocal intensity that may be valuable inside a recording studio can produce a visceral reaction when directed toward a spouse or castmate during conflict. When alcohol impairs Danny's inhibitory control frustration tolerance, and ability to read social cues, the volume and emotional force of that voice may increase, while his capacity to hear the room decreases. That does not make his voice the problem. It makes regulating its impact his responsibility. The Mexico trip brought these patterns together in a particularly revealing way. Danny and Nia chose to marry on his birthday, permanently joining an individual celebration with a relational milestone. 10 years later, "It's my birthday" appeared to become more psychologically prominent than "It's our anniversary." A birthday asks, "How will you celebrate me?" An anniversary asks, "How will we honor what we have created together?" A differentiated marriage must be capable of holding both. Danny's preference for physical touch and his desire for birthday sex may represent a genuine bid for attachment, reassurance, and evidence that he remains wanted. But a love language explains how someone experiences connection. It does not create an obligation for another person's body. Nia's need for sleep is not a rejection of Danny. Her exhaustion exists within the physical reality of pregnancy recovery, breastfeeding, interrupted sleep, and caring for 4 young children. If Danny experiences sex as the pathway toward connection, while Nia requires emotional and physical restoration before desire can emerge, neither need is automatically wrong. The relational task is to communicate those needs without transforming desire into entitlement or exhaustion into evidence of insufficient love. Gottman teaches us that relationships do not succeed because couples avoid every conflict. They succeed because partners accept influence, respond to bids for connection, recognize repair attempts, and demonstrate behavioral change after a rupture. A request to calm down is not necessarily an attempt to silence someone. It may be a partner's effort to preserve connection before the nervous systems in the room become too activated to repair the conversation. But repair cannot be carried by one person. Nia cannot remain responsible for managing her response, Danny's reaction, the cast's discomfort, the family's reputation, and the eventual audience response. Danny must become responsible for his drinking, his vocal intensity, his disappointment, and the impact of his behavior upon the people around him. That is the central Bowen lesson. Differentiation requires each adult to become accountable for managing their own functioning while remaining emotionally connected to the people they love. Understanding Danny's background does not excuse behavior that causes harm. Understanding Nia's resilience does not require her to continue absorbing that harm. Compassion and accountability are not opposites. In emotionally mature relationships, they must coexist. We do not know whether Danny has alcohol use disorder, and it would be irresponsible to diagnose him through an edited television program. But a person does not need a diagnosis before evaluating whether alcohol is compatible with the life they want. The most important question is not simply, how often do I drink? It is, who do I become when I drink, and what happens to the people around me? Does drinking make it more difficult to accept your partner's influence? Does it change your tone, volume, judgment, or frustration tolerance? Do friends become uncomfortable? Does your spouse begin monitoring the room? Do apologies recur while the behavior remains unchanged? Does everyone else have to work harder because you chose to drink? When drinking affects your friendships, your marriage, your work, your reputation, your parenting, or the emotional safety of the people around you, drinking may not be for you. That conclusion does not require shame. It requires honesty. Sobriety does not have to be understood as punishment. For some people, it is differentiation in action, the decision to stop asking the family system to absorb the consequences of a substance that repeatedly compromises their functioning. As we close, I want you to think about the role you occupy inside your own emotional system. Are you the person whose emotions repeatedly become the responsibility of everyone else? Or are you the person attempting to regulate the entire room? Do you confuse compliance with connection? Do you believe that if you remain patient, gracious, disciplined, and positive long enough, another adult will eventually change? Have you learned to present calmness so effectively that the people around you no longer recognize when you are hurting? Does your preferred love language create an opportunity for intimacy, or has it become a standard your partner must meet to prove their love? And if alcohol is part of your life, does it move you closer to the relationships you value? Or does it repeatedly ask those relationships to recover from its consequences? You can understand where a pattern began without continuing to participate in it. Nia does not need to abandon her optimism, discipline, marital commitment, or extraordinary capacity for composure. But she is allowed to stop using those strengths to compensate for another adult's dysregulation. Danny does not need to abandon his voice, expressiveness, charisma, or desire for physical connection, but he is responsible for ensuring that his expression does not overwhelm the people he loves. The goal is not silence. The goal is mutual influence. The goal is not compliance. The goal is emotionally safe connection. The goal is not determining which partner can tolerate the most discomfort. The goal is creating a marriage in which neither partner must disappear for the other to feel important. Because a healthy relationship has room for the birthday and the anniversary. It has room for physical touch and bodily autonomy. It has room for disappointment without punishment, accountability without humiliation, and love without one person managing the entire emotional system. And remember, you are not too late for the life that's meant for you. Path to peace. Pause.